Space had forgotten the name humanity. For generations, their stories faded into the background noise of galactic history. Myths told in hushed tones, exaggerated warnings whispered across battle stations and council chambers. To the younger species of the galaxy, humans were little more than bedtime terrors. Ancient, extinct predators who had burned themselves out long before the modern empires rose. The official records confirmed it. Humans were gone, wiped from the stars, extinct. Great Purge, so the story went, was a surgical, calculated operation carried out by the Allied Dominion nearly 200 cycles ago. Humanity had grown dangerous, unpredictable, unwilling to submit to the rigid hierarchy of the Council. Their technology advanced faster than anyone predicted. Their defiance burned hotter than the cold logic of diplomacy could contain. And so, they were erased. System by system, colony by colony. It was the Dominion's most decisive, brutal campaign. It took decades, but they succeeded, or so they believed. Afterward, there were no human ships drifting through space, no signals bouncing between the stars, no Terran colonies claiming distant planets. Just silence. But history has a habit of lying. And extinction was never humanity's specialty. It began with a blip. High above the remote colony world of Varkesh, nestled on the edges of civilized space, the early warning scanners chirped to life. At first, the signal was faint, so faint the automated systems nearly discarded it as phantom noise. But then, the pattern emerged. A ship. Small. Silent. Moving with deliberate precision. Technicians at Outpost Station 9 leaned in, their eyes narrowing at the ancient, flickering signature scrolling across their monitors. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The room pulsed with a quiet dread that words couldn't shatter. "Is that possible?" one whispered, voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. His superior, a grizzled Thraxian veteran named Commander Zelvar, stepped closer, mandibles twitching in confusion. He recognized the design immediately. The curved hull, the reinforced plating, the distinct, aggressive silhouette like a spearhead drifting through space. It was impossible. "It's human," Zelvar muttered, his voice dry as ash. The room froze. "No," another technician hissed, his scales paling. "They're extinct. Purged. It's a relic. A ghost ship." But relics don't fly this way. The vessel drifted closer, breaking through the cloud layers of Varkesh's upper atmosphere like a silent dagger drawn across the planet's throat. No escorts, no identification signals, just the cold, defiant shape of a Terran ship, alive and breathing. Across the sprawling cityscape of Varkesh Prime, alarms shrieked to life. Defense grids powered up. The planetary shield hummed with raw energy, casting a faint glow over the sky as civilians craned their necks upward, their eyes widening in terror and awe. The older ones, the historians, the war veterans, the exiled diplomats who remembered the old days, they knew. They felt it in their bones. The humans were not gone, and if they had survived, they were not here for peace. In the planetary council chambers, chaos erupted. Leaders bickered, shouting across polished obsidian tables, their voices cracking with uncertainty. How could this be? Humanity was eradicated, their star systems glassed, their military obliterated, their worlds burned. And yet, the ship hovered, casting its long, haunting shadow across the capital. It didn't fire. It didn't broadcast demands. It simply waited. Commander Zelvar stood atop the primary defense tower, eyes locked on the alien shape slicing through the clouds. His claws tightened around the railing, his throat dry. "I thought they were gone," his second-in-command whispered beside him. Zelvar's gaze never wavered. Apparently, extinction was premature. The human ship rotated gently, its hull shimmering with scars, old wounds from forgotten battles, fractures etched into its frame like silent warnings. But despite its age, it pulsed with energy, its engines humming with barely contained fury. The silence was more terrifying than an attack, because only predators this confident wait in silence. And across Varkesh, a single, undeniable truth settled like fog over the hearts of its people. The humans were back. And they hadn't come to negotiate. Commander Zelvar had seen war. He had seen planetary bombardments, orbital sieges, and entire species brought to their knees under the might of the Dominion. His mandibles bore the scars of 3 campaigns. His name carried respect and quiet fear among Varkesh's military ranks. But never had he seen this. The Terran vessel hung above the clouds like a forgotten nightmare, silent, unmoving, but radiating threat in every vector. It shouldn't exist. And yet, there it was. Varkesh Prime pulsed beneath him, a sprawling metropolis of black stone towers, glowing cyan veins of energy threading through streets like living circuitry. Thraxians moved in tight formations, their scaled bodies shimmering under the twin suns. Their culture, ancient, disciplined, thrived in structure and order. But order was fracturing now. Zelvar's personal communicator buzzed against his chest. He answered, talons tapping the device. The voice of High Consul Varak filled his ear, cold and laced with panic. "You see it, Commander?" "I do, High Consul." "Is it confirmed? A human design?" Zelvar's eyes narrowed as the ship rotated slightly, exposing its unmistakable hull markings, scratched, faded but still legible in Terran script. His translator sputtered, decoding ancient English characters lost to time. USS Resurgence, a name that burned like old fire through his mind. "It's human," Zelvar replied grimly, without question. A long, tense pause from the other end. Even the High Consul, with all his political posturing, couldn't mask the fear curling into his voice. "I thought they were extinct." "So did I." History, Zelvar knew, was crafted by victors and sanitized by cowards. The official Dominion records celebrated the Great Purge as a triumph of unity. Humanity's fall was painted as necessary, a species too wild, too chaotic, too dangerous to coexist with galactic civilization. But there were whispers. Old soldiers in shadowed cantinas told tales of hidden Terran enclaves, rogue human ships slipping between dead systems, ghost broadcasts echoing faintly from forgotten satellites. And now, proof hovered above their skies. The humans were not extinct. They had survived, somehow, somewhere, in the void's cold embrace. Zelvar's second-in-command, Lyra, approached, her violet scales reflecting the defense tower's glow. Her sharp yellow eyes scanned the vessel, face unreadable. "They're baiting us," she muttered, hovering openly, waiting. "For what?" Zelvar asked. She shrugged, mandibles twitching. "Maybe to see how afraid we've become." Zelvar couldn't deny it. The civilian channels were chaos. News feeds flickered with speculations, grainy images of the Terran ship plastered across every holoscreen. Markets shuttered. Military personnel scrambled into defensive formations. Fear, raw and unfiltered, oozed through the cracks of Varkesh society. Inside the Grand Council chambers, the ruling Thraxians bickered like hatchlings, debating response protocols. "We should strike preemptively," one barked, slamming his fist on the polished obsidian table. "And trigger a war we're not prepared for?" another countered, eyes wide with dread. "They're a relic," A fossil ship drifting on ancient tech, surely no match for our fleets. Zelvar almost laughed at the arrogance. He had studied humanity, their brutality, their adaptability, their infamous refusal to die quietly. Relics did not cross the stars to knock on your doorstep without reason. "Have we attempted communication?" Zelvar asked as he entered the chamber. The room fell silent at his presence. The decorated war commander's reputation carried weight here. The High Consul cleared his throat. "We've broadcast standard protocols. No response." "Then they're listening," Zelvar said darkly. "Choosing their moment." Lyra's data slate buzzed with incoming reports. She frowned. "Preliminary scans show their reactor signatures unique. The readings are erratic, high output but unfamiliar." Unfamiliar, dangerous, human. Zelvar stepped toward the observation window, his eyes locking onto the Terran ship gliding silently above the clouds. His reflection stared back, etched with battle scars, eyes hardened by war, yet something deep within churned uneasily. "They waited this long," he whispered, more to himself than the room. "Centuries in the shadows. And now they emerge." The council behind him argued in hushed tones, but the words blurred into static. His focus remained fixed on the vessel. The humans weren't extinct. They had evolved. And every instinct in Zelvar's veteran body told him this was only the beginning. The human ship did not move for nearly 2 planetary rotations. It hovered silently above Varkesh, casting its long shadow across the capital like a ghost from forgotten history. Civilian life slowed to a crawl beneath its presence. Markets shuttered, transports rerouted, the once bustling skies eerily empty. Even the twin suns seemed duller, as though the world itself held its breath. The military enforced strict flight bans. Anti-orbital batteries locked onto the ship's coordinates. Every turret, drone, and satellite pointed skyward, yet no one dared fire. The humans hadn't made a sound. Until now. In the heart of the planetary defense tower, Commander Zelvar stood over the primary communications console, his claws drumming against the polished interface. Lyra paced nearby, her eyes glued to the holoscreen displaying the ship's trajectory. Then, a pulse. Sharp, deliberate. A data burst in an ancient, nearly forgotten Terran frequency. It sliced through the jamming fields like a blade through silk. The technicians scrambled to isolate the signal, translating the archaic code. Zelvar leaned in, mandibles twitching as the first audio fragments crackled to life. The voice was unmistakably human. Rough, weathered, yet clear. Male, confident. "Varkesh Control. This is the United Starship Resurgence." His words rolled through the room like a distant thunderstorm. Every Thraxian froze, ears flattened, spines bristling. "Repeat. This is the USS Resurgence. We remember." Zelvar's pulse spiked. He recognized that phrasing. "We remember." It wasn't a greeting. It was a declaration. The signal continued, faint distortion lacing the transmission, but the meaning was clear. "We remember the silence you left behind. The betrayal. The purge. You thought we would disappear. But extinction." The voice paused, and for a moment the room felt like it tilted sideways under the weight of history clawing its way back. Extinction was never our specialty. The comms fell silent again. But above them, the resurgence descended further, its engines glowing faint blue, its silhouette cutting through the atmosphere like an old, sharpened blade. In the council chambers, panic simmered beneath the polished veneer of authority. Military leaders barked orders, defensive fleets scrambled into orbit. But no one dared open fire yet. Lyra turned to Zelvar, tension rippling across her scaled features. They want us to react, to panic. They don't need to, Zelvar replied, watching as civilians poured into underground shelters. We're already doing that for them. From high above the cityscape, the resurgence loomed, a relic of humanity's old wars, yet brimming with modifications far beyond Dominion understanding. The ship's hull bore deep scars, pockmarks from battles lost to time, but its presence radiated strength. Survival. The Dominion archives labeled humanity a self-destructive species, brutal, stubborn, incapable of unity. Purge was supposed to cleanse them, to end their chaos. But history had underplayed one vital truth. Humans didn't die quietly. Across Varkesh, the older generation whispered their fears. They remembered the stories, their grandparents' trembling voices recounting Terran warships, their impossible tactics, their refusal to surrender even when cornered by overwhelming odds. And now, one of those impossible ships hovered above them, alive, breathing, waiting. The Resurgence's signal pulsed again, this time transmitting ancient Terran imagery. Grainy footage of Earth's blue oceans, their burning cities, colonies bombarded, human soldiers fighting in crumbling streets under blood-red skies. Zelvar recognized some of the locations, the failed sieges, the last stands, the battles where humans should have fallen, but didn't. A new message accompanied the footage. Simple, stark. We survived the purge. You taught us extinction. We learned evolution. Lyra's claws tapped nervously on the console. Their technology, it's unfamiliar. Scans can't penetrate their hull. Energy readings spike and collapse unpredictably. Adaptation, Zelvar muttered. They've changed. The Resurgence maintained its position, drifting ominously through the upper atmosphere, its weapons cold but visible. They weren't here to negotiate. They weren't here to plead. They were here to remind the galaxy that humanity's story wasn't over. And Varkesh was merely their opening chapter. For nearly 3 cycles, the human ship hovered, silent, immovable, a ghost made real against Varkesh's blue sky. Below, the planet boiled with fear. Riots erupted in the outer cities. News feeds looped ancient Terran war footage, images of burning starships, crumbling colonies, human fleets defying impossible odds. Shops shuttered. Citizens flooded underground bunkers, their whispers sharp with panic. In the grand council chambers, the High Consul's patience finally fractured. "We cannot sit idle," Varric snarled, his clawed fist slamming against the obsidian table. "This relic taunts us. We must act." Around him, the ruling Thraxians hissed, their scales darkening in agitation. Some demanded diplomacy. Others thirsted for immediate retaliation. Commander Zelvar stood at the edge of the chamber, silent, observing. His years in military service had taught him the futility of panic. But even he couldn't deny the tension strangling the room. "The Resurgence hasn't fired a shot," Zelvar stated evenly. "They've made no demands, no overt threats." Varric sneered. "Their existence is threat enough." Lyra entered, data slate in hand, her face grim. "Our long-range observatories have picked up additional anomalies." Zelvar's mandibles twitched. "Anomalies?" She tapped the display, holographic star charts flickering to life. Faint, irregular signatures appeared across multiple systems, shadows of vessels, fragments of Terran code, scattered transmissions laced with encrypted human dialect. "They've been watching us for some time," Lyra concluded. "Quietly, patiently." The council chamber fell deathly silent. Varric's voice cracked like splintering stone. "So this isn't an isolated ship?" "No," Zelvar confirmed. His eyes narrowed, tracing the patterns. The humans have returned. And this... He gestured toward the resurgence's ominous silhouette hanging above the planet. This is only the beginning. Orders barked across military channels. Defense grids surged to full power. Orbital fleets mobilized. The Dominion's propaganda networks spun tales of strength, urging the citizens to remain calm. But behind closed doors, every leader, every soldier, every historian knew. The Dominion's greatest mistake had not been underestimating human ferocity. It had been assuming they stayed dead. High above, within the resurgence, Captain Elias Ward stood at the bridge, his face carved by time, eyes hardened by loss. His uniform bore no insignia of the ancient Earth governments. Those relics had crumbled with the colonies, but the spirit behind them burned as fiercely as ever. Before him, the vast display screens projected Varkesh's defensive formations, their fleets clustering like frightened insects. "Status?" Elias asked, voice steady, sharp. His helmswoman, Lieutenant Kayla, fingers danced over glowing controls. "Planetary shields at maximum. Orbital guns locked on our coordinates. No direct engagement yet." Elias exhaled slowly. "They're scared." Commander Holt, his second-in-command, approached. His broad frame bore old cybernetic scars, remnants of wars the galaxy tried to erase. "Should we make contact again?" Elias considered it. The silence of space buzzed faintly through the resurgence's hull, the quiet before a storm centuries in the making. "No," Elias decided. "They know we're here. Let the fear settle." Holt smirked grimly. "The Dominion swore we were extinct." "And extinction," Elias whispered, his gaze sharpening, "was never our specialty." Back on Varkesh, in the heart of the military command center, alarms shrieked. The resurgence's engine core flared, brief, controlled, its systems pulsing with raw, unquantifiable energy. Scanners struggled to process the readings. The vessel's design spoke of antiquity, but beneath the aged hull, humanity's evolution whispered. Technological adaptations unknown to the Dominion. Energy signatures defying standard protocols. Lyra's claws trembled as she scanned the data. "They've changed," she muttered. "They're beyond what the archives prepared us for." Zelvar's gaze hardened. "We never should have believed the archives." Suddenly, a secondary pulse blazed through the atmosphere. Another Terran ship, smaller, sleeker, decloaked on the planet's dark side, its hull gliding like a phantom. Within moments, Dominion defense fleets scrambled, interceptors roaring skyward, weapons primed. But the new ship didn't fire. It simply hovered, waiting. The council chamber erupted into chaos. "How many more?" Varric demanded, his voice cracking. "How many survived?" Zelvar couldn't answer. His stomach twisted with the same dread curling around every heart on Varkesh. Humanity's return was not an isolated event. This was organized, coordinated, the beginning of something far larger than a lone ship's defiant orbit. "Testing us," Lyra whispered. "Waiting to see how weak we've become." And deep inside, even the Dominion's most loyal commanders knew. The galaxy was not prepared for the return of the species that refused to die. The Dominion fleets hung in low orbit, their warships glittering like blades under Varkesh's twin suns. The human vessels waited. The resurgence drifted like a predator studying weakened prey. The second Terran ship, smaller yet sleek, circled the dark side of the planet, slipping in and out of cloak, untouchable. Reports of faint signal pings, coded in ancient Terran dialect, spread panic across Dominion channels. Commander Zelvar stood at the central command platform, claws clenched, eyes burning with quiet rage. "They won't fire the first shot," Lyra muttered beside him, her voice low with realization. Zelvar nodded. The humans were hunters, not fools. They wanted the Dominion to fracture first, to expose weakness, to reveal their fear. A sharp chime interrupted his thoughts. The resurgence had broadcast again. The transmission wasn't encrypted. No elaborate demands, just a voice. Calm, steady, human. "We were never gone. You erased our homes. You buried our cities. You silenced our broadcasts. But you failed to understand one thing." Zelvar's pulse quickened as every speaker on the planet echoed the words. "You can erase bodies. You can glass our worlds. But you cannot bury memory. You cannot kill defiance." The voice paused, heavy with centuries of pain. "We survived beyond the edge of your maps, beneath the shadow of your arrogance. And now, we're here to remind you. Extinction is your illusion. We endure." Across Varkesh, the civilians listened, wide-eyed, their panic simmering beneath disbelief. Lyra whispered under her breath, "They never stopped fighting." "They were never extinct," Zelvar corrected darkly. "They were waiting." In orbit, the human ships shifted position. The resurgence aligned itself with Varkesh's northern hemisphere. The smaller vessel, call sign Spectre, drifted closer, its engines quiet as death. Military sensors overloaded, spikes of unknown energy radiating from both vessels. Dominion defense grids scrambled, every automated turret locked on. Inside the Dominion High Command, political posturing evaporated into raw, primal terror. "We have to strike first," one general barked, "before they cripple our infrastructure." "They already crippled our confidence," another snapped. The High Consul's voice cut through the noise, trembling. "How many more of them?" Zelvar didn't answer. The truth was clawing at every sensor reading. Humans weren't alone. They never returned unless prepared. The Dominion archives were filled with statistics. How many humans were lost in the purge? But numbers lied. And now, the myth of human extinction was burning away, replaced by a colder truth. The galaxy's most stubborn predators had never left. The voice returned. Elias Ward's words, clear as thunder across every comm. "Your purge failed. Your history books lied. We are the last children of Earth, the survivors of your arrogance, and we have not forgotten." Lyra's claws hovered above the control panel. "If they strike, we won't hold them off." Zelvar's gaze hardened. "They don't need to strike." The realization dawned across every Dominion channel. Their systems were already compromised. Human infiltration teams had slipped through orbital gaps, sowing chaos in comm grids, exposing cracks in the Dominion's illusion of control. The Spectre's signal pulsed again, broadcasting ancient Terran symbols. A single image filled the sky. Earth, once blue, scarred now by war, yet whole. Underneath it, one phrase. "We are inevitable." Panic rippled like wildfire. Civilian transports overloaded, bunkers sealed, military formations fractured under their own uncertainty. And the resurgence? It remained still, watching, waiting. Zelvar's comm buzzed, direct from the human ship. No encryption, no deception, just a name. Elias Ward, Captain, Terran Remnant. His voice, calm, cold, utterly human, cut through. "This is not a declaration of war, Commander. It is a declaration of memory. You will remember what you buried. You will remember who we were." Zelvar's throat tightened. His veteran instincts screamed. This was not bravado. This was control. "You came for vengeance? Zelvar finally transmitted, his voice steady despite the weight pressing on his chest. Ward's reply carried no malice, only certainty. We came to remind you. We survived. And we do not forget. The human ships powered down weapons. Their engines thrummed softly, prepared to vanish into the stars as suddenly as they appeared. But the message was delivered. The wound reopened, the Dominion exposed, and every soul on Varkesh understood. The humans were not extinct. They had evolved in silence. They had returned with patience and extinction. Extinction was never their specialty. The humans left as quietly as they arrived. The resurgence ascended through Varkesh's upper atmosphere, its engines pulsing with a low, haunting hum. The second ship, Spectre, vanished into the void like a shadow swallowed by starlight. No shots fired, no blood spilled, no cities burned. Yet the scars they left behind were deeper than any bombardment could carve. On the ground, silence reigned. Civilians emerged from bunkers, eyes wide with uncertainty, their heads craning skyward. The Dominion fleets held their formations, weapons primed but useless now, the threat gone. In the Grand Council chambers, the High Consul's voice cracked with disbelief. They didn't strike. They didn't destroy us. Commander Zelvar stood by the window, watching the faint glimmer of the resurgence disappear beyond the stratosphere. His jaw tightened, mandibles twitching. They didn't have to. Lyra, still beside him, her gaze fixed on the sky, nodded slowly. They won. The High Consul bristled. We still control the system. The fleets. Zelvar's sharp glare silenced him. Control is an illusion, High Consul. You saw the broadcasts. You heard their message. The memory. That was their weapon. In the days that followed, the Dominion's propaganda struggled to contain the fallout. Across Varkesh and beyond, the whispers grew. Old Terran myths resurfaced. Tales of defiance, of impossible survival, of a species that refused to die quietly. For cycles, the galaxy had mocked the humans as reckless, chaotic, doomed by their own pride. The purge had been the final nail in their coffin, or so everyone believed. But the truth settled in like a sickness under the skin. Extinction was never their fate. It was their camouflage. Far beyond Varkesh, deep in the void, the resurgence drifted silently through the stars. On the bridge, Captain Elias Ward stared out at the endless black, Earth's symbol glowing faintly on the hollow display. Around him, the crew worked in quiet, efficient rhythm, each of them survivors, descendants of colonies thought destroyed, of fleets scattered beyond the Dominion's reach. Holt approached, arms crossed. They'll panic now. The Dominion will tighten their grip. Their lies are exposed. They'll try, Elias replied, voice calm as ice. But they can't bury the truth again. The Spectre's transmission flickered onto the screen, another human captain's face appearing, hardened by years beyond the fringe. We've confirmed multiple recon cells reporting success, she stated. The Dominion's communications are fractured, civilian dissent rising. Their people remember us now. Elias allowed himself a small, grim smile. Humanity didn't return with fleets of conquest. They returned with fear, with memory, with the truth. And sometimes, that was deadlier than any weapon. Back on Varkesh, the stars shone cold and distant, but they no longer offered comfort. The myth of extinction had been shattered, the Dominion's false history exposed. In classrooms, hatchlings whispered about the humans. In military halls, commanders debated impossible tactics. In quiet corners of cities, underground movements stirred, emboldened by the knowledge that humanity survived. and thrived in the shadows. Commander Zelvar remained at his post, watching the heavens with a soldier's wary heart. The Dominion's arrogance had blinded them. But now they remembered. The humans were out there, watching, waiting, growing. And one undeniable truth echoed through every council chamber, every war room, every frightened dream across the stars. Extinction was never humanity's specialty. Endurance was. And the next time they came, the galaxy wouldn't be ready.